Yeah, I want to welcome everybody. I see some people are still coming in, but we should get started so that we like to keep this to exactly 1 hour because we know people are so busy. So thank you everybody for coming today to the weekly Center of Excellence in Biodiversity and Natural Resource Management seminar series. Thanks to Daniel Igirambabazi for organizing this for us. We did take a break over the holiday, December, early January, and then we started up again, but we ended up having a few cancellations. So Richard is kind of re-kicking off for us our seminar series, and the first one for February of 2021. So thank you, Richard. And I want to remind everybody to keep your microphones muted, and it might be easier to keep your videos off because that helps to just protect the bandwidth and minimizes the distractions. And I think Richard will be taking over the screen soon when he starts speaking. So I want to introduce Richard Nasasira. He has been a friend and a colleague of mine for a very long time. I always remember when I first met you, Richard, at a workshop that was around education and also environmental education. And that might have been in 2006 or 2007. And since then, we've always crossed paths at different workshops and trainings, and we've both been working on these projects that were supported by the MacArthur Foundation, building capacity for conservation, biology, and biodiversity in Rwanda. So it's really been a great pleasure to have Richard as a friend and a colleague. And when I saw that he had finished his master's, of course, I jumped right on it and asked him if he would present about his research. And I'm sure so many people are going to be interested to hear about this. So with that, I'd like to welcome Richard to come and talk to us about what he's found. And I welcome people in the audience to use the chat. It's just up at the top upper right. The chat icon where it says chat with everyone, and you can put in questions or comments there. And then at the end of the seminar, when Richard is done, you can also unmute and interact directly with him. So with that, thanks so much, Richard, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Professor Catherine. You rightly said, I think when we first met, that was 2006. And since 2006, I've been at the entrance of Akagera National Park. So I've been here quite a bit of long time. My name's, of course, you already read my screen, but I work with Kitabi. I stands for Integrated Polytechnic Regional College, Kitabi. And before it became an IPRC, Kitabi was Kitabi College of Conservation and Environmental Management, which was actually a college established in 2006 by then it was Altepen, which is the current day Rwanda Development Board, basically was established to train people that would support or contribute to conservation of biodiversity. And since then I've worked in different capacities for the college, and we've been somehow at a great extent training people who serve in different national parks across the country, in Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC mainly. So thank you very much for the opportunity that you gave me to present my dissertation A few years back, I started doing a master's with the Vinci Institute of Technology Management, which is based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I completed the master's in 2020, but I did actually the research, started the research somewhere in 2019. And so the research findings I'm going to present to you, it's my dissertation project, and for you, I know you from academia. The academic requirement of a dissertation or a research, its main objective is not necessarily the findings you're going to get out of the project that you're going to implement, but rather how a student is capable of applying research skills in finding new knowledge. So it is from that orientation that as much as there was research conducted, but from academic perspective, one of the big components is to see whether the student is able to apply some research skills that would help him to actually venture into real research going forward. And I'm happy that I was able to present and demonstrate that some research skills were acquired. So my project was on biodiversity business innovations, a case of Akagera National Park. And this project, my presentation is actually going to have about 9. I'll do an introduction and a background to the project, and then the problem statement, go through the research questions, and maybe some bit of literature review methodology that I used in the research project, then findings and discussions, and then some recommendations. And then the significance or return on investment, because quite a lot was invested into this project, and therefore we want to see the return on investment, and then acknowledgement. Before we start, I want to maybe hint on what actually inspired me to do this project, and what is at the core, at the center of this dissertation. One of the things is that the sustainability of businesses, we all know whichever business cannot be attained in the absence of sustainability of biodiversity, especially in Africa or Rwanda in particular, where all businesses to a great extent depend on natural resources or biodiversity in particular. So businesses in national parks, for example, would want to know whether those businesses contribute to the conservation of biodiversity in the national parks. And this
Excuse
is
me,
from...
would you mind checking if you've shared yours, because we cannot see?
You don't have any screen?
No, maybe you can try again.
Oh, okay. So all along I've been talking without you guys. Let me...
Yeah, we are curious to see the screen for the first time.
Can you see anything now? Hello, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Sorry. Yes. I think I've already gone through this. This is a small outline of what I'm going to take you through. And I was saying that I was interested in trying to see whether the businesses that are within or operate within National Park, if they do contribute to the conservation of the very resources for which their business depend on. That is at the core of this project, and this is borrowed from one of the topic given by my namesake from Greenfield University about supply chain risk management, where you look at the entire supply chain and try to look at the risks and the costs and benefit analysis. And it's a video that I shared with you a while ago, but that was it. Before I even also go further, I want to define one big concept here, such that if we have to go, we go together, which is Biodiversity business. It is defined by one professor, Bishop, who worked with ICN for quite some time, and ICN defines Biodiversity business as commercial enterprises that generate profit via activities which conserve biodiversity, use biological resources sustainably, and also share benefits arising from this equitably. So basically, it's any form of business that use biodiversity to generate some income, but also the process of using and sharing the benefits out of the business to again investing in biodiversity is what we would here call or refer to biodiversity business. So the biodiversity conservation is a concept that is not new. It has been here over maybe so many years ago, but in context of protected areas, it started with some countries setting aside specific areas protecting those natural resources. And in all Africa, for example, this started with South Africa, which was the first African country to establish a game reserve. In 1898 through 1926, which became a Greater Kruger National Park. That was 1 year after Volcanoes National Park in Rwanda was gazetted as a national park in 1925, as a small area around Karisimbi, Bisoke, and others. So the other national parks actually in Rwanda were set aside in years that proceeded, and I think we'll be seeing when Akagera was established. So there have been different approaches to conservation of biodiversity, especially in protected areas or biodiversity in general. And the prominent known approach is what we call the protection approach, or what other scholars call fines and fences, or the fortress conservation approach. And this was the most known conservation approach, where they put fences were erected around biodiversity areas to exclude people and the animals from the land surface. And here there could be a physical fence, or there could be a boundary that is just known through legal means that is put there. And that's actually started as far as 1898 through all the period through the 19th century. And the other approach that actually was also advanced for the sake of protection of biodiversity, especially around the national park, was the integrated community development projects, which was common 1980 through 1990s. And the Worldwide Fund for Nature actually was behind this. And this approach was actually trying to integrate communities through the use to conserve nature. But because of the participation of lack of legal framework through which communities and government would work together for common good, it was viewed, especially critics of this approach, it was viewed as an extension of the protectionism approach, which did not bring the needed results. And this was also followed by other approaches which are known to us, the community-based conservation approaches, which were common in 1990 through 2000. And the community-based approach was a co-management strategy that considers biodiversity resources as a common property. It requires an understanding of socio-ecological system and traditional knowledge for sustainable conservation. Again, this is a strategy, it's an approach where involvement of communities into conservation of biodiversity is given credit, and it has its also pros and cons. Because of the shortcomings and weaknesses within all these approaches, there has been agitation from different conservationists to come up with other approaches that would either support or contribute or supplement the area approaches. And this is how the biodiversity business for biodiversity conservation approach has been coming up, and this came prominent in 2000 through 2010. And as is already defined the biodiversity business, and I will give an example of some of these biodiversity businesses as we go on. So mainly the problem to my project was that while there has been these projects coming up or biodiversity business coming up, the concern has always been that different laws or different frameworks and agreements are not well implemented, and therefore it's not easier to know whether these very businesses play a role in biodiversity conservation. And this is reported in different documents in Rwanda, especially REMA 2017, through different studies. And for example, if I can pick one of biodiversity business which qualify to be called a biodiversity business, the PP approach that came into existence when African Parks Network signed an agreement with RDB to manage Akagera National Park, which led to the formation or creation of Akagera Management Company, which present day manages Akagera National Park as using a business model to manage the biodiversity of Akagera National Park. And in context of this, we would want to know if this kind of approach has contributed to management or conservation of biodiversity within Akagera National Park. With that, I wanted to ask myself about 4 questions which I wanted to study. One is to actually identify the biodiversity business activities that operate within Akagera National Park, and then assess the role of biodiversity businesses on biodiversity conservation, and then the factors that affect the businesses, and then recommend measures that would see the relationship between biodiversity businesses and biodiversity conservation of Akagera National Park. With that, I did literature review to see what is available and what isn't, such that it can help in the study, in the entire study. And my literature review and the entire data collection process was guided by 3 components. One is a theoretical framework, and the other one is a conceptual framework, and also empirical studies that have been conducted. And in review of theoretical framework was borrowed some ideas from ecological economic theory, and this theory basically looks at the balance between the economics of the businesses per se and ecological services, where the two has to strike a balance for efficiency. Then decision theory also looks at different options and standards set, upon which if you go below, then you will greatly have a negative impact, or upon which you perform above those standards, then you basically have positive impact on certain phenomena. And the innovation theory looks at if you are able to bring about a new thing, a new idea, a new approach that adds value to the common goal. The conceptual framework, I think this diagram I shared with you, I was trying to look at the biodiversity business activities in Akagera National Park and the relationship between them with the ecosystem service, or which are the regulating, provisioning, or cultural supporting services that is provided by the biodiversity within that area. But the relationship between the two is influenced by other intervening variables, like policies, technology, markets, seasonality. There's so many factors. So a combination of these 3 components will definitely play out or affect biodiversity, either negatively, which definitely leads to the collapse of biodiversity, or positively, which leads to biodiversity sustainability of biodiversity in our ecosystem service. The empirical studies, especially people who have conducted similar research across the world, whether in Rwanda or across, and these were guided by the Da Vinci research framework, which looks at 4 components, the TIPS in abbreviation, which is basically T standing for technology, what kind of technology is being used or put in place, for example, in conservation of biodiversity, what kind of innovation are there, and the people involved in conservation, for example, and then the systems that are put in place for especially operational systems that would lead to conservation of biodiversity. So those are 4 guiding principles that I used to when I was doing my literature review. I've already, I think, shared with you what biodiversity business is, but from a broader perspective, we can have biodiversity from different sectors, and biodiversity business as more as there are differences in nature, and it is site specific. In some areas, there could be huge potential for biodiversity business, and in some other areas, it might not be there. So it depends on how a site is endowed, and therefore we can expect different biodiversity business. But for purposes of my project, I focused, I borrowed from what was categorized by Go and other scholars. And they categorized biodiversity business in 3 sectors: the primary, secondary, and tertiary. And then under each of the sector, there are subsectors. And then there is in agriculture, we can look at organic cropping production. There are huge potential of businesses. Sustainable forestry is huge potential in that. In forestry, also huge potential. Businesses in fisheries, same as it. In secondary, which is, for example, pharmaceutical and cosmetic products, you have medicinal oil processing, there could be soaps, oils, creams, clothes, so many things, business opportunities within that sector. Then in the tertiary sector, we have tourism, for example, which actually, if more than 60% depends on nature-based hotels, for example, nature-based hotels, camping facilities, tour operators, educational courses and holidays, biodiversity management services, and so on. And for purposes of my study, I did not want to look at biodiversity business in totality. I only focused on tertiary subsector, especially the tourism, which is a little bit developed as compared to other biodiversity businesses in Rwanda. This study was done in Akagera National Parks. Of course, there are 2 main reasons. This is because one, Akagera National Park uses a business model, a biodiversity business model in the management of the park. And the other factor is it is another area that is hugely endowed by different biodiversity in the country. So it was thought to be a very good site to conduct my study. My research design was used quantitative method, both in data collection and also data collection and data analysis. I used a questionnaire which was self-administered, and also did some interview, but of the same questionnaire, and I administered to some selected groups that I'm going to maybe share. Of course, before I categorized the number of business activities in Akagera National Park, of course, I had done a pre-study to ascertain what kind of business are there and which are not. And at the end of the day, I categorized the businesses as those that operate within the park. That means the business reside within the park, inside the park, and those that conduct business but residing outside the park. And out of these, I was able to find Akagera Management Company as one of the biodiversity business service that operates different businesses within the park. There were also game lodges that are either owned by private owners or even Akagera Management Company. Then there were tour companies that operate, do business within Akagera National Park, but staying outside the park, and also some organized groups of freelancer guides, which created a cooperative that basically do business in Akagera National Park, and using the Yemen's formula, I came up with a sample size of 116 respondents, which actually were got from 125 total population of people doing business within Akagera National Park, and representing 93% of the total population. And by research standards, this is a very good. So the justification of this study was to see addressing challenges facing Rwanda to manage its biodiversity sustainably for present and future generation. The aim was to understand biodiversity business owners, the views or opinions of biodiversity business owners on how they can balance their own goals, government policies, community needs, and the ecosystem services or functions. And to the private sector and government approach currently in use in Akagera National Park, if provide a justifiable, unique opportunity to test how biodiversity business can be used as a conservation tool to reduce biodiversity loss. The other justification was to further that the management approach presents a window of opportunity to provide a baseline study that will be used in assessing whether biodiversity business or market-based approaches of biodiversity conservation can ensure sustainable survival of biodiversity for both biodiversity and local communities. So my findings are going to be presented according to the research objectives. And remember, my objective number one was to actually find the biodiversity business activities being carried out in Akagera National Park, and at least be able to compare and analyze whether this is done as compared to where it is done elsewhere. Because reviewing the literature, you could see that it is not only common in Rwanda, but it is also done elsewhere. And the findings actually found out that there are several tour companies that feed the people into Akagera National Park, and they earn a living out of that business. Communities, activities, and other services provided. It's also another category of the business. There are several camping facilities inside and around Akagera National Park, and these provide some income to the business service providers. Then biodiversity management services. Akagera Management Company as a shareholding company that is managing biodiversity in Akagera National Park on behalf of Government of Rwanda is another business entity that we were able to see. Nature-based hotels, that was another area where people do business. But looking at how these other businesses being done elsewhere, based on literature, the sporting activities are very limited in Akagera. Trekking and rambling, education and holidays, these are some of the opportunities, I would say, that respondents did indicate as lessly being done in Akagera National Park. And in order to really go into the deep of what is being done, we found out that most of the businesses are prominent in nature and beauty, water, flora, and fauna. Then there's some that were focusing in culture and traditions, and then entertainment. If you look at the other four categories of businesses, lodges and hotels, Akagera Management Company, then tour companies, and guides cooperative, their businesses are stronger, or the respondents indicated that they participate or do the businesses in some of the 4 different areas I already highlighted: the nature, then water products, flora and fauna, then culture, which relates to community visits and activities, and a very few indicated entertainment as a business that they are involved in within Akagera National Park. We wanted to find whether by categories in terms of tourism, where they categorize tourism products, business products, including activities, services, facilities, and we found that most of the services offered at a cost, at a fee in Akagera include guiding services, the tour packaging services, and some little entertainment to make people happy. And respondents in Akagera responded in the way as shown in the chart. In the chart, and then also we're looking at facilities that are being offered at a fee in Akagera National Park, camping facilities or sites, binoculars, because they have different tools that they basically hire to their clients, vehicle hires, and accommodation facilities. And again, respondents had their opinions as tabulated in the graph as shown. Lodges, you will see that there are much more, for example, into things like souvenirs. We have accommodation facilities, and then camping facilities. So each of the business category offers different business facilities, and that's where their source of income comes from. Then activities that are done, camping activities, day game drive, community activities, boat drive, and then it is also respondents from each of the business activities, rather categories, also indicated the involvement as presented on the graph. Objective number 2, we're looking at the role of biodiversity business on biodiversity conservation and vice versa. And here I was looking at whether biodiversity is important to the business and whether businesses are playing any role to conservation of biodiversity in Akagera National Park. And again, according to these different business categories, their respondents gave their opinion as represented by these percentages. But there was one just question that was asked to these people, whether their businesses, the biodiversity or presence of Akagera National Park is useful or important to their business. and 92% of all respondents thought that Akagera National Park is at the core of their business. And that appreciation tells us how much they contribute to conservation. Based on these different businesses, they contribute to biodiversity conservation in different ways. One, through education and training and research as a contribution, through financial contribution in form of grants. Some of the business were contributing some small grants towards conservation activities, and in the form of clients that they bring to the parks who pay park entrance fees that is used for conservation purposes, but also other businesses contribute through reduction or loss, or they do maintenance to enhance biodiversity values within their activities. And this is actually in particular to Akagera Management Park Company, whose mandate is to make sure that they reduce any loss and maintain biodiversity within Akagera National Park. In summary, if you analyze the graph that I just presented, you will see that lodges contribute highly to conservation of biodiversity through education and training and financial contribution in form of grants. And they contribute, depending on how the opinion of the respondents seem to reproduce, to support or contribute to conservation or at a lower level through maintenance or the daily reduction of biodiversity threats within the park. Whereas of Akagera Management Company, they are into reduction or prevention from loss of any biodiversity, and then tour companies, they contribute mainly through park entrances of their clients and maybe through training and education. And when it comes to contribution in form of grants, a greater number of respondents within, for example, tour companies showed that they do not contribute in any form of grant to conservation. And this actually says a lot in terms of sustainability, because if you are not ready to reinvest back part or portion of your profits into the very business or the very low raw materials, or in terms of in business context, or the inputs into your business, then sustainability is questionable. And this is backed by statistics or literature that is available. If you see the trends on how biodiversity of, for example, mammals and bird species have been increasing based on the annual census reports of Akagera National Park, you see that there is a trend of an increase in the numbers from 2015, when the number were between 9,000, and by 2019 it was almost 13,000. And even the number of visitors visiting Akagera National Park rising from only 20,000 to 49,000. And this is a reflection of how much they are bringing in terms of revenues and how much they are contributing in terms of increased biodiversity as indicators. And their revenues also has been increasing from 1 million to 2.5 million over the years. And this is available in literature, and if you compare it with the opinion of respondents, you find that there is really a positive contribution to conservation. Main finding on factors affecting biodiversity business in Akagera National Park, we asked them about their opinion on about 6 or 7 factors: health and safety, natural tourism, attractions, training, regional cooperation, infrastructure, security, and all these different business categories had their view on what influences them or affects their business much more than the other. And you see the respondents from all business categories consider safety and security as one of the biggest factors that influence their businesses. And of course, this is much more varied as compared to what we have recently experienced, COVID-19, which brought about security issues, and we saw the number of tourists coming down. Other factors that were identified include the range of tourism products, the laws also governing or influencing their businesses, and the literature has which laws and policies are in favor or are not, and then marketing strategies that are put in place as another factor that is influencing their business. The hindering factors also range from the hindering factors trying to see my screen is not showing them, but the hindering factors include there is competition, there is regional insecurity again, and another factor that I'm not seeing very well on my screen, but each of the business group is influenced or hindered by different factors accordingly, and the common to them, to most of all, is the taxes, especially those the Rogers and Akagera Management Company, and then to our companies. They indicated at different taxes put on them as some of the factors that influences or hinders the growth of their business. Then regional insecurity, especially to Akagera, and then to our companies, and then skilled competitors, and then capital as another factor that hinders their their businesses. Measures to be taken: marketing and branding, regional cooperation, biodiversity business plan and performance indicators, flexible business models, because a bio business would need a very flexible financial model as compared to other business activities. And then adequate policy framework. There are issues of where the policies are not favoring their own businesses. So accordingly to the 4 objectives, we were able to see which the opinion of each of the respondents and what they thought were affecting them. And this study came up with some of the recommendations, and one of them is given that there is still poverty around Akagera National Park, and given that there are benefits in terms of these businesses, then there is a case where poverty challenges within the community and the conservation. There is need to continuously promote business activities around Akagera National Park, such that it can boost the income generating activities and offer employment to the communities around. In that way, they will support conservation initiatives. Secondly, some of the businesses indicated unskilled competitors as one of another factor affecting their business, and therefore there is need to do capacity building for all these stakeholders that are involved in the business as well as conservation. Compared to others where such kind of businesses are boosting, there is need also to increase on this to take advantages on some of the business potential, especially in education, for different clients, including school-going children or other communities that would want to learn from what is being done in Akagera National Park. And finally, the success of biodiversity business in Rwanda depends on the state of affairs about peace and neighboring countries, which means that for purposes of growth in this business, Rwanda, the government should invest in regional peace, such that there is regional peace, which would boost tourism activities in Rwanda. Was this study very important or beneficial to me? Yes, and to others, I think so. And at personal level, being a requirement for my study career, I was able to at least apply research skills throughout the entire process, from the pre-study through research design, data correction, analysis, and reviewing the literature that is there. So you are able to apply all research skills to make meaning to academia and knowledge acquisition and transfer. And then at a personal level again, I was able to apply all skills and knowledge acquired from other modules I attended for my Masters of Science, and being able to apply our institution of philosophy, where I attended my Masters, that is Da Vinci, which looks at problem solving as including the technology, the innovations, the people you use, and the systems in place. So at least throughout the entire project, I was able to apply and see who is doing what, with what is the system like, and I was able to use those skills to find knowledge, rather information that is needed. It is, of course, a foundation for my other postgraduate studies, and through this process, it left with me with the guts to say, to believe that I can conduct research, either for postgraduate studies or even policy formulation and other research programs. Again, I was able to see business potential, and I personally think there is a business potential that I can mobilize resources around me and invest in that. Why not think of a business like a bus youth camp and implement it around Akagera National Park, and be able to host students from UR, from all secondary schools, from all even Kitavi, and then be able to educate and transfer knowledge, and also be able to earn some living out of that project. So at personal level, that's what I think this project oriented me to. And the other benefit I would say to the park or to the management of park, there is a lot of literature that shows that they can still explore their business potential into other areas. I already highlighted them so far. And then the level, it also showed that the participation of other stakeholders is necessary, and therefore there is need to do stakeholders engagement and see those managing hotels, those tour companies and guides, and have a stakeholders kind of approach to make sure that they benefit much more than operating independently. RP, I did this study when I was managing a conservation college, and we do programs in tourism, and we are supposed to educate people on how they can best conserve natural resources. So I think this project also is beneficial to Kitabi College, especially for its curriculum development, but also think of doing business such that you allow students to practice what they are learning. And in this, I think IPRC Kitai has so far registered a company, a private company, called Green Solutions Limited, and we can take it into that direction and conduct business, green business. And then we can also, it's an opportunity to give some short courses for which we thought the respondents needed most. Benefits to government, partnership is key because it has shown progress. And then there is need for capacity building for all stakeholders. And then there is also need to invest in security because it was indicated as a key factor for promoting biodiversity business. I think I took a lot of time. I took all the time that I have, but I want to thank you for listening in to me. I want to thank the Center of Excellence for Biodiversity and Natural Resource Management, especially Professor Beth. I think other than being a long-time friend, Kitabi College is a nod to the center, and I remember all this, and I would never imagine one day I would be giving a presentation to a group of interested professionals and students and colleagues, and give me almost an hour to listen to me. So thank you very much, Professor Beth. And Daniel, thanks for preparing me and encouraging me to come up with this presentation. All the viewers, listeners, I'm so happy that you tuned in and followed me present to you. Of course, Akagera National Park stands to be thanked, Jess Krona. When we started IPRC or Kitabi College, we visited Akagera National Park in 2006. And even before coming up with studies, I should have said that maybe I had my biases as a limitation. I was already appreciating the progress that has been put into Akagera National Park, and of course making it easier for me to collect data, interview and engage with staff and other tourist organizations. That was so perfect. My colleagues at Kitabi College, of course, I think I have been cheating the college by investing much of my time into my studies. But anyhow, at some point, I think everyone will benefit. So thank you, my staff. I know some of them are following me, but I want to thank them as well. So thank you, everyone. and I'll be happy to attend to some of your questions as we take a view of Lake Ihema in Akagera National Park. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. Thank you for that talk. Thanks for taking the time to talk to this group. And I want to invite people to give any comments or questions. You can either put it into the chat room and then I can read it to Richard and he can respond, or you're welcome to unmute and talk directly. So any questions for anybody? Any questions from anybody for Richard? Yeah. Well, Richard, I wanted to ask you, oh, so wait, before I do, there's a question here
Okay.
from Anders. So he was asking, the risks are huge. It seems like it needs a risk and assumptions analysis. Can this make money? I would never invest in this. How much are tourists willing to pay for a remote national park without the big five? Alternative national parks in neighboring countries are better and cheaper. So how to attract students and backpackers? Accommodations in Nyagatare, 5,000 to 8,000 per night. So it seems like it's a question about the potential to attract tourists maybe at more on the backpacker, lower budget level. If the expense is high for higher end tourists that may not be attracted to Akagera. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Try to read and thanks, risk huge, need risk.
Yeah, if you want, you could unshare your screen.
Okay.
And then, open up your chat.
Yeah. I'm doing it. Okay. All right.
Are you there, Richard?
I am not so sure if I understood the entire question, but needs analysis and assumption, needs risk and assumption analysis, can this make money? I'm really not so sure if I understood Andy's question, but one looking at the business, Biodiversity business operating in Akagera, the fact that they have been operating over the years and they have not closed, it means that they are generating or they are getting a profit out of it, and that's why they are able to continuously operate. And in terms of investing in that, yes, it does, and it is something that has proved to them that it generates some income out of it. One of the questions that I asked actually before in my pre-study, I was asking these people how they make money, and the response were were ranged from activities like taking these tourists to Akagera National Park, and out of that they are able to make money. And maybe, I don't know whether I also got his question in terms of needs analysis and assumption analysis, can this make money? I don't know which he was referring to, but if I can pick what came to my mind as I was looking at different Biodiversity businesses, globally or even in Rwandan context, if I can pick a Biodiversity business related to Biodiversity management services, like environmental consultants, who actually in what they do is to specialize in risk analysis, for example, or doing the impact assessment. At the end of the day, they use their nature-based skills and get get revenue out of that. So from that perspective, as in investing yourself to have skills to be able to analyze risks, for example, then you would end up generating some income out of that. That is from the Biodiversity business management services perspective. In terms of then the tourism products in remote areas, one funny thing about tourism is that anything is a product, and it depends on how you have packaged it and who is interested in that product. There are countries, for example, that do not even have Big Five, that attract lots of tourism, lots of tourists. So it would be, I think, based on what Akagera has been able to achieve, if you look at the literature, how they have been able to raise their income from a few thousands to now 2.5 million over the years, it means that it is a viable business that they can do. But also from Akagera Management Company perspective, I was looking at their business plan and how much they generate from tourism and how much they are able to use into conservation of Akagera National Park. They use much more than $2 million that they get out of tourism revenues. But I'm very sure if Akagera National Park and the rich biodiversity within Akagera National Park, it would not even attract any other funding from maybe those interested in conserving biodiversity. So, for example, investing in a biodiversity business or managing of biodiversity on behalf of government, for example, it would be at the end of the day very useful to you as a business entity, but also to biodiversity. And that's how African parks has been able to grow from one national park, for example, in some 10 years ago to now 15, 16 national parks, because they have been able to, based on the biodiversity within these countries, and sell their products and bring benefits to the organization, but also to biodiversity in general. I think this is what I can try to put close to Andy's question.
All right. I hope that responded to Anders. Feel free to unmute if you want to clarify that more, Anders. And meanwhile, does anybody else have a question or a comment? Yeah, I just wanted to quickly ask Richard. We're getting close to finishing up here, but I'm wondering if you could just summarize what you think are some of the greatest opportunities for linking business to biodiversity in Akagera National Park based on your research and your observations there? Are there other areas that have not been tapped into? Yeah.
Well, as you might have seen, the numbers of tourists going to Akagera has been increasing steadily. For example, I think 2019. 2019 had around 49,000 throughout the year, and the potential here is that how do you attract these people, 49,000, to spend much more time in or around Akagera, and if you are able to do that, then there is potential for business in terms of accommodation facilities, especially for different client groups, be it local or non-local, because half of this percentage is not international tourists, but rather national or regional tourists who might not necessarily afford the high-end hotels and lodges within Akagera National Park. So there could be potential for accommodation facilities for these people, and then you can attract them to stay longer in Akagera. That is one area that I saw that has potential. I already indicated that educational programs within conservation establishment is another area that can be invested in, and then people would benefit from that because it is done anywhere. And if you look, if you have moved in Akagera, you will only enter into a vehicle, and if you are not lucky to sight a zebra or any other big five, then you will not certainly have enjoyed. But if there are educational programs within or around the Akagera National Park, then people would be much more sensitized, or educated about biodiversity in Akagera, which brings benefits to conservation. So educational facilities in Akagera, purposely as a product, it would be another area that can bring potential and to benefit so many. I know how terrible it is if we have to take students to Akagera National Park because of logistical issues, and so is other higher education institutions or even other schools. And when it is not, for example, arranged by Akagera National Park, then it becomes even harder for institutions to take initiative. So if you invested in educational facilities to bring some more benefits in Akagera National Park. Again, some other products, bio products that are there, which are doing well in other parks. There is balloons, for example. It works well in one of national parks in Kenya and one of national parks in South Africa and I think in Zambia, where I did my literature review, and it attracts so many local tourists because and one of the reasons as to why it is much more liked by local tourists for example, the balloons, one of the reasons they're suggesting is that very few people have gone or traveled by airplane, and if they get chance to go by balloon and view some animals, then it makes the experience very much more interesting. So those are some of the areas that can be invested in. Some sports, I don't know, with Big Five and leopards and lions, if you can do some running and around Akagera, but that is another area that you can do. Or entertainment within Akagera, such that you bring life in the park rather than viewing or sightseeing mammals and bats. So in summary, those are some of the potentials I can see from educational perspective and from tourism perspective. Those would be potential areas to invest in.
Sorry, thank you. I really appreciate that response. And yeah, we're at 20 after, a little bit past, so I'm going to wrap this up now. And thank you again so much for that research. I hope it can help to inform aspects of the park management and biodiversity conservation and models for other conservation projects in the country. So thanks again, and thanks to everybody here for attending. We had a great number of people here, and if any of you have a talk, something you'd like to present in the seminar, let us know, because we'd love to hear about what you're doing. All right, thank you all. Stay safe and have a great rest of the week.